Hello, welcome back students. Today we're starting a new unit studying thermodynamics, and thermodynamics is a branch of physics that is focused on heat and heat transfer. To get started on this unit, I'm going to talk about 3 different ways heat can be transferred, and you might remember some of these terms from a previous science course that you've taken, but the 3 ways heat can transfer are conduction, convection, and radiation. Okay, so in this video I want to at least talk about what these 3 things are and examples of each one of them. First method of heat transfer that I want to talk about is conduction. This is the way that heat is transferred through touch. Okay, so anytime anything is in physical contact with another thing, then heat is going to flow between those 2 things that are touching through conduction. Okay, typically conduction occurs between 2 solid materials. Whenever you put a pan on the stove to cook some eggs, you turn the stove on. If it's an electric stove, then you're converting electrical energy into heat energy through the heating element of the stove, and then when you put the pan on that heating element, heat energy is transferred through conduction from the stove into the pan. And then similarly, whenever you put your eggs into the pan, it's touching the pan, so conduction is occurring between the eggs and the pan. Some materials conduct heat more than others, and some don't conduct heat very well, and we call those things insulators. Both kinds of materials, conductors and insulators, will have different uses and different purposes. The next form of heat transfer I want to talk about is convection. In the process of convection, heat is transferred through currents in fluids, so it can either occur in air or in liquids. Okay, so once again, this is how heat is transferred through fluids, and whenever fluids are transferring heat, they move in currents, and that includes both air and liquid. An example of convection in air would be like an air conditioner pumping in cold air through currents into your house. An example of convection transferring heat through a liquid could be like whenever you boil water on a stove, the water that is on the bottom of the pot is going to heat up first, and as it heats up, it's going to move in a current to the top, and then the cold water is going to get pushed to the bottom, and then it'll cycle around the pot in a current. Okay, so you can see convection as air currents, or also as water or liquid currents. Okay, the last form of heat transfer I want to talk about is radiation. Radiation is heat transfer through light, which can travel through space at a distance, right? So an example of this would be the sun radiating light, which heats up the earth. Something like a fire can transfer heat through both convection and radiation. If you stand at the side of a fire, you feel heat from the radiation of the fire, the light coming out of it, more specifically the infrared light coming out of it, but we'll learn more about the different parts of light later. Also in a fire, heat is transferred through convection because above the fire, there is a heat current that is created, and it's actually more intense heat than it is on the side of the fire, which is why, of course, you cook above the fire, not on the side of it. Okay, so in conclusion, we talked about the 3 different ways heat can be transferred: conduction, convection, radiation. Conduction is through touch, and it usually occurs between solids. Convection is through currents, which can occur through fluids, either air or liquid. And radiation is through light, which can occur in air or an empty space. In the next videos, we're going to talk about the laws of thermodynamics, and we'll discuss why it's important to study the transfer of heat. Okay, thank you guys. See you next time.